Shards. If you have not followed his Triple H horse racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.
Good evening and welcome to episode 289 of the HHH Racing Podcast. I am your proud host, Howard Kravitz. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. A little bit early. We're going to start a little bit early as the NFL season kicks off, as we're, of course, filming this here on Thursday evening. For those of you that will be listening and watching later, we want to sort of beat that NFL crowd. So thanks for joining us. And we've got a huge show tonight. We're going to be covering the late pick five at Kentucky Downs this Saturday. It's an all-stakes pick five. And get this, folks, each race at least $1 million purse. Wow. Big fields. It's going to be very exciting. Please make sure you hit that subscribe button on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. Had a big event sort of on Twitter today as we hit 1,800 followers on Twitter. Thank you very much if you follow us on Twitter, and you can do that by looking at my name tag at H Kravitz there. Please make sure you follow on Twitter. Below the video player, hit that notification bell, which will tell you when new content on the show will arise, so you don't have to jump to the YouTube channel all the time, and smash that thumbs up, that like button. We really appreciate that. That will send more people to our show who look up for horse racing advice and content on YouTube. You can listen to us also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. We have fantastic power picks. Look below the video player for information about power picks, and also look below the video player for our new address. We are now on Instagram, and yes, we have a TikTok site. So check us out on Instagram and TikTok. We'll be filling up those awesome places. So please make sure you check that out because we now have Instagram and TikTok accounts as well. We are everywhere in the stratosphere of horse racing media. So check that out. We also have our website, hhhracingpodcast.com. Let me bring on one of my co-hosts who is ready in the bullpen. Before I do that real quick, we have some people already in the chat. Steven Vandenbroek is here. Smash that like button. Yes, please do that. Richard Avalar, good evening. Uncle Howard, much congrats on Shards. Yes, we will talk about Shards when we bring Pete and Paul on here. Someone new, I believe I've not seen, Brian Landsman. Brian, thanks for joining the show. I don't think I've seen your name in the live chat. I missed Saratoga. They need an October-November meet. Wow. I'm sure a lot of people would enjoy that. Some people from a betting perspective, Brian, I'm not so sure how much. Trish Smith is here from Lexington, Kentucky. Such a heartbreaking defeat today for Matt's pick, Baltoro. I was working. I didn't see a lot of Matt's broadcast, but missed a pick 4, 5, and win bet. Oof. Sorry about that, Trish, but Matt has some very clever opinions. And Matt Bernier will be with us, folks, later. He'll be with us later on in the show. Matt Bernier from FanDuel and NBC Sports. Will Craig, congratulations on the win. Our Stephanie's here. Matt Miller, good friend Matt Miller. Shards was terrific today. Congrats. Well, let's talk about Shards and a few other things while we wait for one of our co-hosts. Right now, we got one of them waiting in the bullpen from the East Coast of Maryland and proud teammate and partner with myself and many other people with Shards. Let's bring him on. Pete Visco. Pete, the Shards fan club is here.
What's going on? That was awesome, huh? Although I disagree with you. I like the ride. I like getting the horse out in the clear when you got the best horse in the race. Don't worry about it. Just get him out, get him a straight run, and we see what he did.
For those people that are going to be watching live right now or listening and watching later, tell everyone what the hell we're talking about, because we keep mentioning Shards, and not everyone probably plays Colonial or maybe follows this show as closely as others.
Yeah, one of the horses that myself, Howard, Paul, and Kyle own through Crown's Way Racing. Apologies, I've been having a choking fit just as we were coming on, so apologies for the voice. So a piece that we own ran today, I think in the 9th at Colonial, and broke his maiden. Yes, it was the last race. I think it was the 9th. broke his maiden on his third try with a sweeping closing blowout victory. So it was just an awesome race, an awesome run. And he had run pretty well in his first 2 starts. So it was great to see him get over the hump finally.
Yeah, it was terrific, and he rated and kindly. It's important to be able to rate and finish, Pete, for
Yeah.
sure, because he showed a lot of speed before, and so I'm sure the plan was to, rate and finish. And he was a little goofy. He was looking in the stands. Maybe he was looking for some of his friends or trying to grab a beer or something. He was sort of had his head cocked to the side there at the top of the stretch, looking around. But listen, he's a young 2-year-old. He won very easily, and don't know about how strong the field is. We have some very strong aspirations. I rather not say publicly where he may go next or what the plans are, but let's just say there could be some extremely important races coming up next month, Pete, for you, myself, and all the partners of Crownsway Racing. And Kelsey Danner, I've talked about Kelsey already, Pete. If people don't know Kelsey Danner, what a fantastic trainer. She just does a great job and continues to just pump out winners. So congratulations to Kelsey Danner, all of her crew, all the people
Yep.
that work with her, the hot walkers, everyone, Pete, because
For sure.
can't do it without them, obviously. And Gallardo rode a nice race to get the horse into the clear.
And if anybody cares, by the way, on our website, we have a new page from the last couple of weeks where we just post victories by horses that are owned by someone in the HHA crew.
Love it.
We're actually starting to get a pretty decent list. It's only the recent one, so it's probably, maybe 5 or 6. So it's not all historical, but now that we're all involved in different ways, we have a page just so anybody wants to take a peek. And if you want to put any of our horses, in your stable, in your virtual stable or whatever, to keep an eye on them, please feel free to do that as well. So you can hopefully bet with us and celebrate along with us as well.
And again, for those of you that might be getting home from work right now or looking on YouTube and just got their notification, like, what's going on? I thought the show usually starts at 8 p.m. Eastern. Again, we're going early today for 2 reasons. First night of the NFL, number 1. But really, the main reason is because Matt Bernier is going to be joining us a little bit later on the show live, and he just got off the air. I want to give him a chance to relax, shower, change, whatever. We really appreciate Matt coming on. And speaking of people we appreciate coming on, let's bring on from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the Saratoga Special, and also a proud partner of Shards, Mr. Paul Halloran. Paul, were you out celebrating the Shards victory? How are you? He's muted.
Oh, he's on mute. You're on mute, just like always.
Oh boy, he's a hot mess tonight. That's all right.
There you go.
I'm
just one of those people who get used to doing something at the same time every week. Silly me.
No
hey,
problem.
I thought you'd be sharper now that we're earlier in the evening. We figured you'd be,
If I remembered it, Pete, I'll be very sharp.
That's true. That's a good point.
Paul, you didn't miss much for you to say Matt Bernier is coming on later, and Shards was really impressive at Colonial. Paul has a bright future.
How about 3 wins in a week for me, Howard? Copper Missile last week, Dracone on Saturday, and Shards today. Peter Brandt went 0 for Saratoga.
Listen,
you don't need to spend millions.
This horse racing thing can be frustrating. It can also be exhilarating. Speaking of exhilarating, before we talk about Kentucky Down tonight, which is why we're here, of course, look who's in the chat. There he is, Anthony Rallo, the president of Crownsway Racing. Thanks for the kind words, guys. Love the guest tonight. Been listening to Matt's show since I was working in construction and dreaming about getting back into racing. Tony, appreciate the kind words. Speaking about dreaming, man, I think you and the partners are dreaming about some big races coming up, but I won't tease what's happening. I don't want to make anything public right now. I'll let you do that on Twitter and whatnot, but please get involved with Crownsway Racing. They were a proud sponsor of ours earlier this year, and we hope to have them, of course, as a sponsor in the future. And Tony, we know you're listening. So Matt Miller said, Tony, couldn't be happier for you and the team. Terrific job all around. Incredible experience you are creating for the partners and their friends. All right, guys. So anyway, you got a lot going on. We are going to be discussing Kentucky Downs tonight with Matt Bernier coming on in about 25 minutes. Before he comes on, guys, we're going to talk about race 8 and 9, the first 2 races in the sequence of the late pick 5. And guys, I don't know about you, Kentucky Downs is very difficult. I'm very happy to have Matt Bernier on later, who's been there, by the way, all meet long, and can tell us a lot about the nuances of this track. Because frankly, Kentucky Downs is just damn difficult from a handicapping standpoint.
I mean, in a
Would you
good
guys
way,
agree?
though, because it's, well, in a good way, because it's got
In a
big
good way.
fields. It's competitive. I know I love betting turf races, but the good thing is, too, the obvious horses just don't win. So, you don't just get a horse, gets obvious, gets on the lead. You don't get that, you don't get that slow fraction, just jump on the lead and take the field around in a merry-go-round. So if you like that, if you don't like that, then Kentucky Downs is for you.
Let me just also mention, this is very important for everyone listening and watching, and I sent out an email. We are, for the near future, we're going to move up our show half an hour, our flagship show on Thursday nights, again, do the NFL. So, and until you folks hear otherwise, we are going to be starting our show at 7:30 Eastern for quite a while. I'd like to push it back to 8 at some point, but during the NFL season, we want to have as many live viewers as possible. We are going to carry a little bit into the start of the NFL games, but no one cares about the NFL who's watching the show. So, but
which is why you don't move the time. But that's another story for another day.
Okay, well, I'll talk to Paul Allen.
Production meeting right now. Yes, production meeting on the air
in the middle of the show. We'll see. But for next week, let's just say we are going 7:30. We don't want to keep moving back and forth, but maybe we'll keep it at 8. We'll see. But anyway, just check here. That's why you have to subscribe to the channel and check out and make sure you are watching and paying attention. But we plan, I believe, on going on 7:30 as the start time on Thursday nights. All right, let's get into the pick 5, guys. Here we go. Late pick 5, all stakes pick 5, huge purses. The first race on Saturday, late pick 5, is race 8. Let me put our banners up right now on the screen as well. Here they come. And there they are. Wow. Okay. We're all sewing the same horse. It's the Exacta Systems Franklin Simpson Stakes. It's a grade 2. It is $1 million, which includes $400,000 for the Kentucky bred. So actually, it's just to be clear, it is $600,000. But if you are a Kentucky bred, you are in for another $400,000 in the purse structure. This is for 3-year-olds specifically. They're going 6.5 furlongs on the turf, and like we said, this is a very difficult, turf course, and there's hills and bumps and whatnot. And I think I actually have a banner, guys. Let me see if I can bring up this banner one more time. Let's see what this looks like on the screen. There we go. So there is the configuration of Kentucky Downs. So that's 6.5. I don't know if you guys can see can you guys see my cursor right now? Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Obviously 6.5 will start about right here. And then they're going to make they're going to go downhill and a left turn, not too dissimilar from Santa Anita a little bit. But anyway, just going to show right there. We'll show it on the screen. This is a big field of 12. There are some also eligibles. The morning line favorite is the number 8. Very soft morning line favorite. Mo Stash for Vicky Oliver and Rafael Bejarano. We are all 3 of us are going with behind enemy lines for Jack Sicherson and Tyler G. Pete, I'll have you go first. What do you like about behind enemy lines?
Yeah, this is a fun field. I think it was a tough race to come up with something, but I think with behind enemy lines, the first thing you look at is sort of class and competition. And behind enemy lines has just been knocking heads with some of the top 3-year-old turf horses in the country. You see Carl Spackler, who was just great again. Major dude, lost to Webslinger Fairbridge, major dude again. And then even in the U.S. debut, beat Anglophile, who just won a graded stakes at Del Mar on whatever that was, Sunday or whatever day that was this weekend. So it's just been knocking heads with some pretty high quality horses. And from that perspective, and I think that in that U.S. debut was actually sprinting, went a little bit longer. Now we're cutting back. So I figure if we can get a good trip out of the 12, which isn't the easiest thing in the world to do, but if we can work out a decent trip, I figure this one just on class and talent, maybe just at a price too over this field. The only bad thing is when I saw that all 3 of us picked, I was doing the stats after I sent you the picks. Jack Sisterson, 0 for 25 wins, 1 for 25 in the money at Kentucky Downs. So hopefully we can break his dry streak in this. Yeah.
One of the best ones he's ever sent there.
I'm sure. But still, 0 for anything, it never makes you feel great about your pick. But
now, Pete, one thing that I was going to wait until Matt's on, but I'm going to let Matt expound on this more. But this is very important for everyone to know. I'm going to put us all on screen to accentuate how important this is. They've been in lane 2 at Kentucky Downs the last few days. Starting Saturday, they are going to lane 1, which is the innermost rail position. It's the freshest ground there on the ground. So if you've been watching Kentucky Downs, often when they show that pan, guys, or even the head on, you can see how fresh to the inside or to the right of the screen, to the right of where they're running, where it's ground that's never been run on, and the ground they're running on is starting to get a little bit chewed up and etc. So I'm going to talk to Matt. I'm assuming, Paul, you want to be in the innermost post, or at the very least find a way to get over to the inside, because that will be the freshest ground. Not only that, they did get some rain yesterday. The turf was good. It's supposed to be absolutely gorgeous the next 2 days. So I do expect it to be firm, Paul, but I'm glad they got a little bit of rain. I don't think it's to be unfair speed favoring. Matt will give us more intel, but they will be running on fresh ground, Paul, in the first, I'd say, 5 to 6 paths.
Yeah, and that's certainly a factor. But I'm not that concerned with the post at this configuration. Howard, you showed the configuration. It's it just there's a lot that can get you beat at this track. It doesn't seem like the post. And Tyler's riding very well. I think he had 3 today, maybe. Definitely had 2. Might have had 3. So. And Pete talked about the class of this horse. I thought this horse was a winner in the Penn Mile until Major Dude came along. That Churchill Downs race, Howard, that we saw, that race was a good race as far as quality, but there were horses who did not run their race that day. This guy wasn't the only one. So I think Tyler can get the trip we need, and 4-1, maybe he's listed at 5. I think he'll be lower, but I think he has as good a chance as anyone, and that is why he is my top selection.
Yeah, I think he's got a big shot here. Turning back, I don't mind that. He's going to be flying late. I think there is enough early speed, guys, on the inside. I'm just a little bit concerned about the post, but we'll ask Matt Bernier when we ask him some questions later about how he feels about an outside post going 6.5 with this configuration. Pete, you've got the 6th third. I've got the 6th second. I thought Playlist, this is obviously a big step up in class, but he's winning very well right now. And sometimes when Wesley Ward gets his horses good, they get really good. I don't think that he'd send this filly here if she can't run, and she's going to get some pace to run into, a good post, and she's a little bit of a price also. I'm not throwing her out of any horizontals.
No, she's and she is tactical. So like you said, I agree with you. I think there is a pretty good amount of speed, and she should be able to, if she can work out a trip, she should be able to get a nice position. She has improved. Part of what improved her was just the growth from 2 to 3. It looks like she only had 2 races as a 2-year-old, and neither one was all that great. And then she came back, wasn't great in the first one, but it was a little weird the way it was run if you actually watch it, and then went on the synth, and now getting back to the turf, it's just sort of exploded.
Yeah.
The only concern you have is both wins were at 5.5, so you hope the little extra distance doesn't get her. But again, if you're looking at a 10-1 shot, Wesley Ward, he hasn't been great at Kentucky Downs, 4 for 27 in stakes sprint races, which usually you think of those as his forte. But still, since this horse added Lasix and got back on the turf after that one sprint, after that one synthetic race, and got that little layoff, she's just been lights out and picks up Johnny V again. So why not at a double-digit price for sure? Yeah. I mean, I think this is sort of a leg you can go a bunch of different ways too. So if you can get a price to start this thing off, why not?
I'm spreading. Last horse we'll talk about is Close the Game Sugar. And Paul, this horse had a big upset in the Mahoney at Saratoga. I will say, and again, we'll ask Matt about this, the Saratoga runners don't necessarily do very good at Kentucky Downs. And so that sometimes these Saratoga horses are a little over bet. Now this one for Adam Rice won at almost 20-1. upset the field being Private Creed, who was the 2-horse in here who none of us really love that much. So I don't know if this is really a step up in class. To me, this horse has to prove it again. I sort of feel like last time was the time. But if he continues to improve, Paul, I mean, why not?
Yeah, and this year the Saratoga horses are doing okay. I was listening to a podcast the other day that Rick Hammerly was on. He is the racing secretary, I believe. And this year they're doing okay. And the only surprising thing here is that it's not Jose Ortiz. Is he in this race? He is the leading rider there. I don't see him. He's got to be there Saturday, doesn't he?
I would assume.
Maybe not.
Lascano did ride last time, though. I will say that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
so
that's true.
I don't remember seeing Jose.
I don't remember seeing him either. No, I don't remember.
Yeah,
I don't think Jose is there.
He must have something at Del Mar then, right? Because there's nothing in New York to keep him here.
I don't know. I'm
going to look it up, Howard, because that's why I'm here.
All right.
By the way,
look that up.
Charlie Freeman,
by the way, Charlie Freeman of Bettin' and Boozin', who did a great job last night. Check out their shows on Wednesday nights. This is about the Ward horse playlist. Pete, who we like a little bit. Distance make people nervous, but the figures match, and I love Wesley Ward horses a lot, and the odds. Yeah, I mean, the distance is a small concern, but we'll see. Guys, this is going to be – I'm spreading here. Yep. I'm spreading a lot. We didn't even talk about Sweet Cherry Pie, who none of us have, but if this horse can take to the turf, I mean, he's interesting. We didn't talk about Mo Stash very much, who is the Moorline favorite. The turnback, I don't know. This horse seems a bit one-paced to me, guys. I don't know if this is like a sprinty type. Any quick thoughts, and we'll move on Mo Stash.
No, my thing, it was funny when you look
Paul's
at Mo
got him
Stash.
second, by the way, guys.
Mo Stash wins. Mo Stash early when he was sprinting, he came from off the pace, and then when he started stretching out, routing, he's more of a front runner, but his fractions, or at least from like the time form pace standpoint, they're not as high as some of the other speeds. So it looks like maybe in a sprint, he's not going to be on the lead, or at least that's what history from his PPs would tell us. So I'll be curious to see what the tactics are with him.
Yeah, listen, the pace situation, who the hell knows, guys? There's so many variables that makes this track difficult. Let's go to the next race, guys.
Howard, Michael Austin points out correctly that Jose Ortiz will be at Colonial Downs for the Virginia Oaks and Virginia Derby. Thank you,
perfect.
Michael.
Thank you very much, Michael. We got great viewers. Thank you, Michael. I was trying to think, what are the big races this weekend? I forgot it's closing weekend at Colonial. Those are big purses, so can't really blame him. Not quite as big as Kentucky Downs. But anyway, there's race 9, guys, on the screen. But 2 of you are going with one horse, and I'm going a little try to get in cute little price shopping, so to speak, with a Chad Brown runner. Paul, let's go to you first here. This next race is, let me bring it up on screen. There it is. This is the Castle Hill Gaming Ladies Turf Stakes. It's a grade 3. But you know what? Let's just make it $1 million anyway. With the 400,000, with the 400,000 extra from the Kentucky breds, this is a field of only 7. The Moorline favorite is the number 3, White Frost, for Bill Mott and Joel Rosario. You guys are both going with New Year's Eve at 5-2 for Brendan Walsh, and again Tyler Gaffleone. And this filly is in very good form, Paul.
Yeah, she really is. Big effort last time in the prep for this, and those horses have done okay. The horses that ran in Ellis Park had a day of prep races for these Kentucky Downs Stakes. And, again, we're right back to the company lines, but in Italian, Didier twice, going back to last year with the Moonlight, McCulloch twice, with the Moonlight twice. Again, Tyler is, I think, riding as well as anyone nationally right now. I like this horse a lot. I mean, the 3 looks tough, but the 3's got a little bit of seconditis. That's why I kind of went away from him on the top line. Obviously, very usable, but I'll tell you, if the 3 is 9-5 and the 7 is 5-2, it's going to be a very easy decision for me on what to do on the win side.
Yeah, and Paul, there's a lot of these horses have like the same buyer, so I found this race a bit confusing. I think when in doubt, just go with the class. The 3's got some back class also. So it's probably the 3 or the 7. I'll talk about my 2 in a minute. Pete, do you want to add anything about New Year's Eve? And then you've got the 5 in second, Henrietta Topham, who, again, a lot of these horses are between, 88 and 93, and it might just come down to trips. So why not go with a price with your 5? But anything you like to add to the 7 and talk the 5 quickly, Pete?
No, I think Paul hit everything pretty much on the 7. Brendan Walsh he's been pretty hot at Kentucky Downs as well. I don't know if he had anything today, but he's been pretty hot.
He had a couple, Pete.
Did he? I didn't look today.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's good if he's staying hot. If you're a New Year's Eve fan, if he stays on fire, that's good. Henrietta Topham, yeah, I agree with you, Howard. They all were a lot closer for what the odds were. So that's why when I looked at White Frost, the same thing. I was like, for sub 2 to 1, she doesn't tower over the field in any way. And I'm looking at this one going, I think if this one runs their race, now there's not a ton of speed in here. So that was my concern, that if you're looking at the closers, which my top 2 are both going to be coming off the pace, that would be the only concern. In the last one, just 2 back, or I should say 2 back, I didn't love the trip, got sort of stuck and wasn't running straight for some reason. So she couldn't gain any ground. And then the last one, she didn't have much room. I didn't really like the ride. Graham is back up again, so hopefully he gives a better ride this time. But again, if something does happen up front, we can get this one loose. I'm looking for a price in a race where, like you said, I think they're a lot more even than the odds reflect.
I think so. I like that pick, Pete. There's no reason why some of these other horses can't win. Guys, I'm going with a horse that on paper looks inconsistent and maybe not good enough. But you know what? This right up here, this 106 early time form right here, if this horse is not on the lead, I don't know what Irad and Chad Brown are doing with this horse. I mean, when she gets the lead, guys, she's good. Go back to last year on my birthday in the Lake Placid. She beat with the Moonlight Dulce Zell, going to the lead, going 1 mile and 16th with a 96 buyer. First time back this year, she needed that. The last 2 races, guys, she's been rated like in behind. I just don't think that's what she wants to do. This horse is best on the lead. And I say go to the lead, Irad, especially if the inside paths are going to be better. If she can get the lead and slow down the pace, I mean, New Year's Eve is a closer. Your 5's a closer, excuse me. White Frost, the 3, who is absolutely a threat in this race, obviously, is a little more stocky, but I think this is the one they'll probably be sitting outside of the 2. I don't know, guys. We've seen plenty of strange stuff happen with horses that get to the lead. And Irad and Chad like it a little bit of a price. I'm interested here in Haughty. And this horse has to have the lead, though. If this horse does not go to the lead, I don't think she's winning. And so I'm gonna throw my hat into the Haughty ring a little bit. But again, guys, this race is, wide open. Regal Realm is a nice filly. She can win. But I agree with you guys, just for the record. White Frost and New Year's Eve are the classiest of the bunch. I just don't think a lot separates these horses in general. That's just my feeling here.
2 things. Brendan Walsh had 3 today, as Chris Mack pointed out in the chat. And aren't you a little concerned about the 1 right next to the 2 going with, or, certainly going with him was ahead of her last time in the De La Rose.
Yeah, I think
Giroux is aggressive.
He is, and he could send. It's a fair point. I think Irad will break and see. I just want, selfishly, I think this horse is better near the lead, guys. And Irad's got to send and at least look to his left and see what he's got. Maybe Giroux is going to send, and we'll talk to Matt Bernier, who's about ready to come on here, waiting in the bullpen. We'll talk to him about jockey intent and how these paths et cetera, going to be on Saturday. But there's a fair point, Paul. I hear you. I don't see a speed duel. I don't think either one of them are that stupid. So we'll see. I think Haughty's got a shot if she sends aggressively. That's sort of my sneaky pick. Ladies and gentlemen, we've had many of fantastic, great guests on this show. And this next gentleman is not only going to be our next guest, but I consider him a good friend of mine and especially a friend of the podcast. He has been doing yeoman's work with FanDuel recently at Kentucky Downs. He's there to cover, and of course, he does a great job with NBC Sports. Let's bring him on, fresh probably out of the shower and a long day. We cannot thank him enough for coming on. Here he is, Mr. Matt Bernier. Matt, how you doing, my friend?
No shower just yet. I had to call home, talk to the kid before she went to bed. She was having a bit of a
sorry
rough
about
day,
that. We got you on
Oh.
before that.
No. It was. I figured I'll talk to you guys first before I go and shower and grab a bite to eat. Thanks for having me back on, gentlemen. Good to see you all again.
Hey,
You
Matt.
too, Matt. How's it going?
We now have
Good.
2 New Englanders on the show. I feel better, Matt, already.
2 for the price of 1.
There you
That's
go.
right.
What's new in Franklin, Kentucky, and how's the hotel, by the way?
Run of the mill, no complaints with the hotel as long as the bed's clean and there's hot water. I'm not one that's going to really get too bent out of shape about that sort of thing. I think the most interesting thing is the weather this week is like a 180 difference from last week. It was 80 degrees, kind of overcast today, and it seems like that's kind of what you're going to be looking at for the rest of the week. Maybe the sun will come out a little bit more, but it's not supposed to be crazy hot like it was last week. So there's a fair bit of rain that came to the area on Wednesday, led to early on, before the racing even began, the turf was listed as yielding. Now, or throughout the day, it got upgraded to good. There was a constant little bit of a breeze, but you could see the horses were kicking up some divots here and there. So there's definitely a little bit of give in the ground. I'm going to assume by the time we get racing on Saturday, we'll be back to firm. But no complaints. The racing was good today and should be over the weekend.
Terrific. Matt, I got 2 quick things before we get into the last 3 races. First of all, I need some therapies. I need a therapy session. And I prepped you on this a little bit. So last Saturday or last week, I touted Churchtown big time on this show in the Mint Millions race against Annapolis. It was one of my picks of the year. Frankly, I went on and on. I loved that horse. He got in trouble the time in the race before. I was completely against Annapolis in the race. At least I was right about that. Coming back quickly, yada yada. But Churchtown got a whopping 2 buyer. Obviously, something happened, and he didn't run at all. So here's my question: I got some hate with DMs and emails. And Matt, I know you're willing to go out on a limb once in a while. Do you remember the last time where you loved a horse that just completely flopped? And how do I massage my ego a little bit and make myself feel better about picking a horse who didn't run at all, basically a DNF with a 2 buyer?
I mean, it's the reality of the situation is if you do it enough and you give out enough sort of plays or you give out enough opinions, just purely on probability, you're going to be wrong many times, and many times you're going to be wrong in miserable fashion. And I guess for me, I've kind of hit the point where so much of it boils down to, from a gambling standpoint, right? I may love a horse, and let's say I think the horse should be, I'm just going to use obvious numbers, 2-1, and they go off at 6-1. And I say, this is a big push. I'm all in here. Well, the reality is 6-1, the likelihood of the horse winning is a heck of a lot less than the 2-1 that I think the horse should be. So either I way overestimated the horse's chances, or the public is vastly underestimating the horse's chances. And as we know, the most accurate handicapper that there is, bar none, is the public. So for me, it's one of those where you just kind of take your lumps and say, all right, well, swing and a miss. If someone is going to completely disregard your opinion going forward, then they didn't make a difference to you anyway in the long run. I think anyone that looks at this game, and I continue to go farther down this road, if anyone is judging other people's opinions on a handful of races or ideas or things like that, this probably isn't the game for you. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just the reality. You're going to be wrong a lot. And it's part of the reason I try to make it abundantly clear. If there's, we put in picks at the beginning of the day and they come up, but in the $10 win bet thing, we catch a lot of heat for that. Look, we try to explain it as the race is getting ready to go or whatever. I would bet this horse at 4-1. The horse is 9-5. I'm obviously not advocating betting $10 to win on a 9-5 shot. It's all within whomever the player's means are. A $10 bet for some might be $1,000 bet for others. How am I supposed to differentiate that? And, you don't want to alienate different groups. You don't want to completely ignore the people that bet quite a bit, but you also don't want to talk down to the people that, their comfort zone is $5, $10. It's a delicate balance, but I think in terms of your scenario, if they're going to give you that hard time about one horse that for whatever reason didn't run, screw them. You don't need them.
Yeah, well, listen, it's no, I hear you. It's when you make like play of the summer, and then the horse doesn't run. It's tough. But listen,
Put it this way. I don't mean to interrupt. I would be more upset personally. Not that I gave the horse out this, that, or the other. It's just that if I loved this horse, and again, a bit of a non-effort, I would probably be more upset than anything anybody could say because I've obviously put everything around the day
Oh yeah,
into the horse and all that sort of stuff. So I am much more in my own piece where I'm in it for me. Yeah, we're giving out information. We want winners. But at the end of the day, I'm trying to pad my own
oh
pockets.
no,
So nobody can tell me anything that's going to make me feel worse than I already feel.
for sure. No, it's all good. We got great support on this show. We've proven ourselves many times, but that was a particular rough one. Richard Avalar, I did put it below. Said compliments on the Jeff Ruby interview, by the way, and Trish Smith below here, Matt. You know Trish, of course. Baltoro ran her heart out. Definitely a bet back. Heartbreaking defeat. I didn't see that race, but I'm assuming that was a little bit of a price because you tout many wonderful like middling prices that do well.
Yeah, she wasn't anything crazy today. She went off at 6. She was at the back of the pack. Adam Skitza had them out, and they just sort of bided their time. And I think it was the right call. The interesting thing about Kentucky Downs, as you guys know, is just the meet is so short and things change so dramatically. Where last week it felt like there was a intense sort of bias towards speed. I don't believe that was the case today. But then also we're trying to figure out: do you want the inside paths? Do you want the outside paths? You saw a lot of horses making moves down the center of the track. Bolt Oro was down on the inside, and then she tipped out and came with a run. I think it was pretty fair today, to be honest with you. I just thought it's more a matter of does the horse handle the track or not? Because I had someone that was involved with Farbridge come by the set last Saturday. They go, what do you think? I go, I mean, on paper, yeah, you're clearly the best horse. And he goes, but I go, I have no idea if the horse can handle this track, and I don't know if anyone does. I mean, it's the blessing and the curse of this track. It's just such an anomaly that some horses are going to get over it and some won't.
Well, Matt, let's talk about Saturday now. Saturday, and we have a lot of intelligent viewers. We also have people that are new to the show and new to horse racing. Talk a little bit about the rail positions. The rails come down Saturday, I believe, and it'll be on the innermost posts. They're going to run on very fresh ground. Give everyone some insight in general on what posts you may want, or what if you'd like to be on the lead, or where you'd like to be on Saturday. Obviously, you're just guessing, but you've been there all meet, and you're familiar with the configuration.
I'm going to approach it like any other turf course in the United States, where if the rails come down, I think of Fairgrounds a few years ago, there was a very pronounced difference when the rails were up and then when they pulled them down leading into the Louisiana Derby, where the inside, let's say 2 or 3 paths, it was like a highway. If you got down there, you didn't stop. So obviously speed would help for you to get down to the rail. But worst case scenario, if you're going to come from off of it, get down there, save as much ground as you can, and then try to hopefully find some kind of a trip and path down the lane. Here, I would like to think it's going to be similar. We saw when the rail moved into 20 feet last weekend, it seemed like those kind of paths, the new fresh paths, were where you wanted to be. But then again, I go to today, and granted, it'll dry out considerably more than it was today for Saturday. I would like to think inside is where you want to be. But it truly, this track is such an anomaly. It really boils down to you could be on the absolute best part of the track, but if the horse doesn't take to the hills, it's not really going to make much of a difference compared to, a Saratoga or, Fairgrounds or a Gulfstream or your more traditional tracks that we know horses can or can't get over. So many of the horses ship in here. And honestly, we've seen horses that have good Kentucky Downs form in the past show up here and not lift a hoof. It's kind of a coin flip, 50-50 shot whether they're going to take to it or not.
Yeah, so probably horses that have run over this turf course well would be a big advantage. Matt, let's get to the last 3 races, and I'll say it a few times, but we appreciate you. I know it's a long day for you, and we appreciate you coming on, and, our viewership has just exploded, especially in the last year or so. So we have a lot of people watching. Please comment below the chat of the video player, but most importantly in the live chat for any questions on Matt Brunier in the last 2 races. What we're going to do, Matt, is we're not going to hold your feet to the fire for a top 3 selection. We'll just give you a general overview of the race, and then Pete, Paul, and myself, we'll just ask you one question about the race. Maybe it's about a horse, maybe it's race flow, just sort of more generalizations. And as we do that, Matt, you're going to see picks on the bottom of the screen. These are the top 3 picks for myself and Pete and Paul. So let me show right now there on the banner across the screen. And so you can see that, Matt, as I go and bring up the Equibase entries here for race 10 as I go full screen. Race 10 is the Ainsworth Turf Sprint Stakes. This is a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup. It's a grade 2. It's $1 million with that added $400,000 purse for Kentucky breds. They're going 6 furlongs. This is a very short trip. I'm sure Matt will have some things to say about where they start and whatnot. It is a big field with some also eligibles, or one also eligible, field of 12. And the morning line favorite, a very soft, is the number 7 Cogburn for Asmussen and Santana, who is very good right now. Matt, as I go ahead and bring us back on screen here and go to the PPs, as you can see at the top of the screen, everyone, it's a pretty, I watched some replays, Matt, of this race from last year. It's a pretty short run into that bend, and you would think the inner post positions might have an advantage here. What do you think about this race in general?
No, I agree with that kind of assessment, that with this 6 furlong kind of configuration, you start basically at the top of the hill and you start running down the hill around the bend. If you can get over to the rail and show some speed, I think that helps. So it certainly gives a horse like One Timer, I think, a little bit of a leg up, especially with the rail position. I think that's going to be advantageous for him. My concern, these turf sprints, especially we've seen at Del Mar and you see at Gulfstream and you see some of these other places that run 5/8. It really feels like if you make the front, maybe you don't win, but you're going to finish in the top 2, maybe top 3. I'm not convinced that that's exactly how this is going to play out. I think if the pace is hot enough, it can set up for horses from off of it. So my fear, if you like One Timer or you like the 8-horse No Balls, would be that they just kind of hook up and they throw it down and they go too fast for their own good. I think it's a fascinating race. You can go 15 different ways in a 11, 12 horse field. Bad Beat Brian, I think, is a little bit interesting. This is a horse that has run consistently well, whether it be at Kentucky Downs or Keeneland. And I probably sound like a broken record now, but for whatever reason, it's anecdotal. I don't have actual numbers to back this up, but I feel like Kentucky Downs and Keeneland, there is some kind of, simpatico between the two. I don't know why, because the configurations couldn't be any farther apart. But
right.
I think certain horses that run well at Kentucky Downs, they can transfer that to Keeneland and vice versa. Bad Beat Brian's run well, really, at both of those racetracks. If they go crazy fast, Eamon kind of sneaky at a big number. I'm probably leaning towards some combination of either Bad Beat Brian, Anaconda, who you just take a look at the running lines recently, the 5-horse, going longer. I like the slight turn back. You look at the 1-turn turf races, the 6 or 7 furlong turf races under Joe Sharp tutelage. You've got 2 wins in the 2nd place finish. So this is probably what he wants to do. And there are no Casa Creeds or Annapolis's or Emmanuel's or Filo de Ariana or even Chez Pierre in this field. So, I could see Anaconda. I'm going to have to convince myself not to pick my old friend Gear Jockey, because I scored out on him a couple years ago.
We both did 2 years ago. I remember that very well. Second off the layoff, a ridiculous price. He should not be 30 to 1. I can tell you that.
His form leaves quite a bit to be desired, but he likes the track. So I'm probably looking in that kind of ballpark, whether it's Bad Beat Brian, Anaconda, or maybe even Gear Jockey.
Pete, we'll let you go first. Quick question for Matt on this race or horse.
Yeah, since I was thinking sort of similar, Matt, where I was hoping for a little bit of a speed duel. My question is, with like Noble Reflection being all the way out in the 11 at this configuration, do you think that horse would have the ability to even clear and sort of contend with Nobles and whoever else is on the inside, or does that post sort of maybe sort of take away a little bit from the speed that Noble Reflection will probably hopefully try to show?
I think Flo is going to have to be aggressive. To your point, Pete, I'm not totally convinced that he's fast enough to clear. Yeah. I mean, one thing if he had to clear one, but he's got to clear both One Timer and No Balls, and they're 2 wickedly fast horses. So in my head, darned if you do, darned if you don't. If you step on the gas and he goes and you clear those 2, you've clearly gone way too fast.
Yeah.
If you sort of relent and you take back, I mean, I think his best running style is when he's winging it on the front end. So you're not only taking off and sitting, but you're probably carrying ground. You're probably 3-4 path around the turn. It's just a really tough position. I don't think I'll have any Noble Reflection. It's not because the horse isn't talented. It's just I think this is a brutal draw.
No, and I'm with you. I don't actually like Noble Reflection at all. My hope was that Noble Reflection would take the starch out of some of the other speed, and a horse like Cogburn or some of the other closers would be able to then close through, and you wouldn't get somebody sort of a little softer. Like Noble's seems like if he gets on the lead, he's talented enough to back the field down and then kick away. So I don't think Noble Reflection could do that from here. But thanks, I appreciate that.
Paul, quick question for Matt, and then I'll put my 2 cents in and we'll move on to the next.
Yeah, Matt, I just want to see, Cogburn is not the traditional Steve Asmussen horse where he runs 8 times on dirt and then all of a sudden he becomes this turf. I mean, I saw the Troy and, I don't know. I was going to say I don't know how good the field was, but then Thin White Duke comes back and wins a stakes. But, could this horse be the real deal on turf?
Yeah, I think so, 100%. And I think also you've got a couple things going for you with Cogburn. He's proven between 5 and 5.5. He's proven over firm ground or testing soft ground up at Saratoga. He's beaten good horses, perfect 3 for 3 on the grass. And I'm of the opinion that if for whatever reason, it's not going to happen, but if they backed it down, he can be up there among the pace. Maybe he's not outright on it, but he's not going to be far off. And if they throw it down, he's shown that he's just as comfortable rallying from really 10 off of it as he is 2 off of it. So if someone said to me in a field this wide open that I think 4-1 on Cogburn is fair, I have no gripe. I think he stacks up very nice in this race.
Here's my main question for you, Matt. Have you heard a buzz? Is No Balls and One Timer definitely going? Because sometimes Ravelli can be a little, how shall we say, Linda Rice-esque, where he scratches once in a while. I just have a hard time believing they're both going to this race, because if they are, they both have the same kind of race flow. And I think actually No Balls is actually faster in a dead send. And I think One Timer is learning how to, I don't know about rate, but learning how to sit a little bit off. The problem is One Timer has the rail. I'm sure Ravelli would prefer that to be switched, Matt, so that One Timer can just sit off of No Balls. Have you heard anything? Because I don't know if One Timer can sit in the pocket and wait and, get cover and finish. He's not really that. He's a free running kind of horse. He's really not that type. So that's my concern with One Timer in this race.
I don't know anything one way or the other.
Okay.
But to your point, it would be, it's something that you have to factor in, that it's the same outfit all around for these two horses. And what's the likelihood that they're going to duel each other into the ground? So maybe one doesn't go and maybe the other does. I do wonder, we've talked about it with all these races. It's $1 million. I mean, this is, especially for these turf sprinters, you probably don't have many opportunities to run for this kind of money going forward.
Well, it's a win and you're in too for the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. So
maybe they hope that they can just, go on a merry-go-round, 1-2 this field to death, and next thing you know, you collect all the money.
Before we go to the next
200,000 per second.
That was my thought. Yeah, that was my thought. Because I looked at that, I was like, I wonder if they're gonna. Then I'm like, well, this is just, the purse is so crazy. That what the hell? You just put them in and say, let's put them both in because they both have a shot. So why not?
I do wonder if that's more what it is. Like, hey, look, they're both in great form. It's $1 million. Why not?
Yeah. Matt, I know you're a wordsmith. I appreciate using the word spiel on the show today. I'm just wondering, in this race, do you have some snake references? Like, for example, I wrote a few things down. You have to bear with me. If Anaconda comes through, that he swallowed the field, or he could take a bite out of the field, or perhaps he's got a stranglehold on the field late. Matt, just tell the director and the producer, hey, guys, I got some clever things to say. I know Caden's going to have something to say about Nobles, probably.
I'm going to have to take notes of this. I didn't realize that I was going to be getting these little nuggets that I'm going to have to pull out on Saturday.
There you go.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Stranglehold, swallowed for Anaconda. By the way, Caden's done a great job. I just want to throw that out. I know she's been partnering with you. She's fantastic as well. Nice to have her next to you for all these races, Matt.
She's the best. She's the best. And also, it's nice to have everybody that I work with is very nice, but
Absolutely.
She's down to earth and we can just shoot the breeze in between races. Well, of course, she's been pulling double duty. She's going to the paddock, doing in-house stuff, and then racing back over to the set. So she's been doing yeoman's work.
And for
by
those
the way,
don't
Matt,
know,
if you want to keep your job on air, I wouldn't use any of the jokes that come from this show.
Well, there goes
if you
my
like
future
if you
FanDuel
like your
gig.
salary, I wouldn't use any of those.
Noted.
Thanks. He'd always keep me grounded, man.
I try.
Keeps me-
That's what we do.
I also want to say, I haven't actually made this public, not that it's really a big deal, but I will be actually at Kentucky Downs the first time on Saturday. I want to shout out to Nick of FanDuel, who invited me down there into the hospitality tent. So I'm really excited to see the races. Of course, excited to see you, Matt, as well. But it's my first time at Kentucky Downs, so thank you to FanDuel. Really appreciate that. Let's go to race 11. You see our picks on the bottom of the screen. Race 11 is the AGS Ladies Turf Sprint Grade 2, another $1 million race. You see it's a field of 9. Baystorm at 9-5 for Jonathan Thomas and Floran Drew. Matt, you can see our picks across the screen here. I thought this race was pretty wide open despite the 9-5 morning line. Your general thoughts on this, which is not, by the way, a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup.
I'm probably, I think, call it lazy handicap and call it what you will. I liked her today, and she didn't go here. She scratched into this race. I'm probably going to give the 8 Unbridled Mary a chance at 20-1. She's a little bit light on figs, but she ships in from Southern California for Sadler. Look, when you're running at Del Mar and you're trying to come from 5 off of it, going 5/8, you have no chance.
Yeah, good luck.
So for her to run the way that she did, I thought that was pretty credible. She has a number of races in the past that are at least she's within a puncher's, chance, a straight right of being involved. I'm not saying that she's a likely winner, but she's 20-1, and she's probably going to be pretty darn close to every bit of that 20-1, assuming this field stays together. So I'm probably just going to give her a little bit of a look, and you take a look at the rest of the field. Baystorm makes all the sense in the world. She nearly won this race last year. She's run very well at Keeneland in the past. And again, I kind of always draw those parallels. Trained to Artemis, the debut wasn't bad, but I do wonder a little bit where the form is and if she stacks up quite as much or as well as some of the other runners in here. Wakanaka is a fascinating mare to me just because I think her best probably wins. I don't know when we're going to get her best and when we're not going to get her best. And truly, I don't know what her best game is. She's done a number of different things, and it still kind of seems like it's hard to really tell what her best situation is. So I'm going to take a bit of a stab in here with Unbridled Mary.
I like it. Paul, let you go first with a question for Matt for this race.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Wakanaka, Matt, and if this distance might oddly enough be the one. She's one coming from way behind in a mile, and she was closer at 5.5 last time. And to a very good horse, Roses for Deborah. But, in an odd way, that's right in the middle here at 6.5, which, of course, at Kentucky Downs is probably more like 7. Could this be the distance that she's looking for?
Probably so, because, you go through, you take a look. She won the Dance Smartly last summer up at Woodbine. That's effectively a 1.5 turn kind of, a little bit more than for a mile and 16th. They tried the Woodbine Mile. I'm not going to hold that against them. Her run at Belmont in the Just a Game last year behind Regal Glory was a winning kind of race. She defeated an Italian that day as well. I'm with you. She's a 1-turn horse. It's just a matter of finding out what that's. She reminds me of Casa Creed. Casa Creed's a better horse, but the idea that I still, as good as he's been at a mile, I still personally believe Casa Creed's better, probably like 7/8, maybe even like a 6.5. One of the most disappointing days of the past year or so was when I found out that the turf sprint this year at the Breeders' Cup was not going down the hill, because to me, Casa Creed would have been an absolute, I'm going to live and die by Casa Creed because that hits him right between the eyes. And now, do I really think he's among the best milers in the world? Never mind the U.S. He's very good. He's very good. I feel like Wakanaka, you could say the exact same thing. She's probably not elite at a mile. 5.5 is kind of sharp. This is probably what she's wanted all along.
I don't want to be too disrespectful to her, and we're going to move on. But I've chased her. I've had enough of her. She's goofy with her lead changes. I think Bill Mott would even admit she's been a little bit disappointing in general. But she's a nice horse. We'd love to own her. She's just been a little disappointing to me. Pete, real quick, question for Matt.
Yeah, it's more of a generic one, Matt, but it actually applies to Wakanaka a bit. Like Bill Mott, 0 for 18 at turf sprints at Kentucky Downs. Just one of those random stats where I do stats for our weekly picks. So as I go through, I was surprised that some of the higher level trainers who just aren't successful at Kentucky Downs, even ones that are normally good on the turf. What do you equate anything to that? Or do you ignore anything like that? Or you take into account, like, for some reason, this trainer's horses just don't run here, or when they bring a horse here, it sort of moves the horses up? I don't know what the explanation is enough to know why one trainer would be more successful. Like even Chad Brown, he was like 1 for 8 in stakes races at Kentucky Downs. So when the premier turf trainer in the country comes here and he's just not as successful. Do you look at that? Do you care about that? Do you think there's reasoning behind that?
To me, at least in the past, and I think it's slowly starting to change, but I think a lot of it has to do with the timing of where this meet stacks up on the calendar. Someone like Chad, even like a Bill Mott, you go right from Saratoga, you've got, call it a month, and then you go to Keeneland. And I think the better horses get targeted that direction. And you send, I hate to say, the B or the C string here, and you hope that you can take all the money anyway. Now the purse money is so astronomical that I think it's going to start changing if this continues to be the trend, which there's nothing to suggest it won't be. And also, I think conversely, there are other trainers that they just have figured out which horses are going to handle this course or be better suited for it. The two that come to mind are Mike Maker and Safi Joseph. They're horses that when you just see the form, you go, okay, they're fine. They're no superstar. But whether it's the running style or the distance, the configuration, whatever it may be, it seems like those guys get the best out of their horses here. I do think in time, though, if the bigger trainers, and I say that, you get my point when I say bigger trainers. I think if they start targeting some of these races, that's when you probably see those numbers change a little bit and become more positive.
So I assume, though, I love that explanation, but I assume, though, there's probably value advantages now to say, hey, maybe if some of the bigger quote unquote outfits take a little more money than maybe they should, you can find some value in some of the other horses under some of the smaller barns because of that, even though they take the money for name only.
Certainly. And I mean, you've even seen it with, there was a horse, it must have been the first day I was down here, so maybe last Saturday, there was a Wesley Ward horse that on paper, very difficult to really make a strong case for. And she was, I think, 8-1 in a turf sprint. And I go, that can't be a good thing. And she's still running. So I think it is one of those things where you do get some of the name recognition. Highest Honors, we'll talk, he's in the next race around the AE list. He's a horse that ran in this race last year, and he probably took more money. He ran well. He nearly won the whole damn thing. But, the idea that he's not really an A kind of horse. He's not a Breeders' Cup horse, put it that way. So I'm with you. That's kind of how I approach it. If I can find some of these more well-known outfits that are sending out some horses I think you can poke holes in, that inherently just increases the value on everyone else.
Very quickly, I just want to give my top pick, guys, in this race, which is number 2, Quaria Comet. If you like Baystorm, you have to like this horse even more. She was in the same race as Baystorm, guys. I'm not going to show the replay, and we're going to move on. But Baystorm got a dream trip last time, just in the pocket, came up the inside. Matt, I'm sure you watch a race, or you'll be watching the race in the next few days to prepare for your telecast. And then Quaria Comet was legit 4 wide on the turn and just lost by neck. I thought she actually ran a better race. She's an improving younger 4-year-old filly by Shackelford. Talmo is going to have this one on the inside, most likely, in those nice clear paths. If there's enough speed ahead, this is my interesting horse. I'm just going with a fresh face. We've seen some of these horses like the Wakanakas before. I'm ready for this gal to maybe take a step up, Matt.
I have no issue whatsoever. Nearly paired up by her tops. Anybody that's listened to me knows that that's a favorite angle of mine. And truly, she's never run really. She got 2 duds, and one of them wasn't even really a dud. She finished 4th. She was beaten a little more than 3.5. But with the exception of that lone dirt try, she's never done anything wrong.
No.
And actually, one of those that I like that horse too, Howard, and Palo Lobo. Small sample size, but 5 for 13 over the past year at Kentucky Downs, 7 for 13 in the money. So his horses have been performing. So when I saw that stat, I had already picked the 2, but when I saw that stat, I was like, that's a, at least I know that his horses come in. And like you said, Matt, maybe he's pointing them here. Maybe they just like the way he trains, fits the configuration. Who knows? But he's been hot here as well.
All right, let's go to last race. And Matt, again, we appreciate it. Anytime you need to leave here, because we're about the half an hour mark. So
I'm good.
This is the big one, Matt. How about $1.7 million with the purse increase, of course, with Kentucky Breds? Unbelievable. This is always a fun race every year. I enjoy this race, Matt. And our picks are at the bottom of the screen. I know that you're a self-proclaimed lover of long distance turf races. So I would have to assume this is, of all the races we're talking about here on the show, this is probably your favorite one. I know you're very familiar with all these horses. You don't even need to look at the PPs, my friend. You probably know where these horses have run and how they've done. Again, picks on the bottom of the screen. Let's take a look at it, guys. This is a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Turf Classic, and I don't want to be disrespectful to these horses, but none of these horses have a chance in hell in 2 months. But who really cares? Because this is going to be a really fun betting race. You see, it is a field of 12 here, and the morning line favorite is the New York bred, Paul, the New York bred number 11, Therapist, for Maker, who I think has 3. Yes, he's got 3 in this race. Castellano is going to ride this 8-year-old. Matt Therapist last time ran a huge race and frankly surprised me in the United Nations. I will say it wasn't exactly the strongest edition of the United Nations. Your general thoughts on the Turf Cup here to close out what's going to be an unbelievable day Saturday at Kentucky Downs, Matt?
I mean, look, you've got quality in this field, and I know you're, put it this way, truth be told, depending on who comes over from Europe, more importantly, if Equinox does show up, I mean, everyone's running for second. There's no two ways around that. But,
Matt, I can be more direct because I'm not on national TV, so I would never say that, of course. Well, I guess I am. Make a public look, you know what I mean.
I'm not opposed to sitting here saying, and again, this is the FanDuel Kentucky Turf Cup. I'm not saying anything out of line, saying that most of these horses are going to be big prices if they get into the Breeders' Cup. Yeah. But having said that, Santine, I think he probably was a beneficiary of a Churchill turf course that many horses hated and some loved. He happened to be one of the ones that loved it. I'm talking about last year. He ran well in the Arlington Million at Colonial this year. But he's got some races in his past that are good enough to be not only competitive here, but would at least give him a puncher's chance in a race like the Breeders' Cup Turf. I don't know that I see him as a true mile and a halfer, but I don't fault the connections for taking a shot here. I think it makes all the sense in the world. Verstappen, I think, is very interesting, very sneaky. 9-2 doesn't get the juices flowing for a race that I think is this wide open. To me, the most likely winner is Red Knight. And I don't want to, dump on Therapist, but Red Knight, he loves the turf course. He's another one. Really, you got to go through you got to go all the way back to August of 21. That was preceding a layoff for a real true dud. I know people see that 11th in the Breeders' Cup Turf. He had a miserable trip that day. I'm not holding that against him. He should have won Sycamore back in October of last year. He was 100 wide. This is a horse that's still in really good form, and he's 9 years old. I think he's the most likely winner. I'm probably going to need to decide, am I going, well, I say that. I'm probably going to the 12. I'm probably going to Spooky Channel.
Wow.
Just because Spooky Channel's best race this year in the calendar year is good enough to win this race. And he's going to be 20, I would think, 15, 20. I've got to go back, to be fair, totally honest. I have not watched that run at Ellis last. Maybe he didn't pick his feet up, but it looks eerily similar to other races he's had in his past performances. If you go back when Brian Lynch still had him, I don't know if you have the lifetimes up there, Howard, but if you can go back to December of 2020, he comes off of a layoff. He's toward the back of the pack. He comes with a little bit of a late run. Okay, finishes 4th, no big deal. He comes right back and he wins the John B. Connolly. I'm kind of looking at that Kentucky Downs preview, the Turf Cup at Ellis, saying, look, he just lagged at the back of the pack. He came with a little bit of a run. This should set him up perfectly for this race here on Saturday afternoon. He run well at Keeneland in the past, which again, I'm drawing that parallel. I think Jason Barkley, I know he doesn't have a ton of stock. I think he's a pretty sharp guy. Yeah. And again, I'm going to get a giant price on a horse that I know has races that this year are good enough to be right up there with some of the better horses. So I'm probably going to go with Spooky Channel.
I'll tell you what, I think that's a fascinating pick. And the owners, by the way, NBS is related to Crownsway, Pete and Paul. They have a lot of partnership with Kelsey Danner and Crownsway Racing. NBS is an ownership I know. Matt, I think this horse is fascinating. I'm sure the last one was more prep. He was wide. It's a wide open race, blah, blah, blah. Paul, we'll let you ask Matt a question, and then Pete, and then I'll wrap it up.
Yeah, man, I just to quickly pick up on Red Knight, you mentioned his last bad race. We've talked about this on the show several times because I've written about this horse a lot. That horse was sent out to retirement after that race. after the August 25th race of 21. And after a few months, they called they called the owner and said, hey, he wants to run again. So he went to Maker. Of course, you got a turf marathoner. Who do you go to? But won't be able to run in New York next year because he's going to be 10. So he's got a few months left. But I was going to ask you about Santine because I know you talked a little bit, but I think the horse is a little fascinating. You know, I wasn't really sure about the dirt runs, although I did get sucked into betting them because I'm kind of a fan of them. But I think your point that you probably already made, so maybe it's not a good question. But, you know, you look at those 3 triple-digit buyers way back, and, you know, Set Piece was a heavy favorite last time and just steamrolled them. But that's a pretty good effort. You know, I was going to ask you if you think, you know, his best race wins it, and I guess you've already answered it.
I put it this way. I think it gives him as good a chance as anyone. The real question for me has more to do with the distance than anything else. You know, I also said this to someone the other day. I think Brendan Walsh is the best underrated trainer. Somehow you can still be underrated despite winning the Kentucky Oaks and all these other grade ones. But I think across the board, if I had a horse, I would probably call him and see if he would take the horse, because I think dirt, turf, long, short, I think Brendan Walsh is as good as it gets. And truly, Paul, if you could guarantee me that this horse would see out the trip, I would think 5-1 would be a very, very good number. I'm just a little bit unsure of, does he really want to go that far? And then one other, you know, well, actually, and kind of we can, oddly enough, Santierra Italia, I loved her as a racehorse. And she kind of started to hit the wall past 9. You know, she wasn't a true 1.5 mile type. I also can't help but get past or look at those 2 big races at Churchill Downs. And I know I said it, but those races over that turf course when it was a bit of a mess down there, some horses absolutely despised it and others just kind of skipped over it. And he seemed to be one that skipped over it. And his 2 kind of crowning achievements are over those surfaces. So I think he's probably an A- talent here. If you can get the 1.5 miles, I think he's got a great chance.
Man, I thought he ran. I've been up and down with this horse. I thought he ran huge last time. I mean, he's the only one that really stuck around in a pace that sort of collapsed, and Set Piece came from last. I totally agree, Matt. You took the words right out of my tip sheet's mouth, because this is one of my plays of the day, and I have only one concern. Can he get the distance? He's going to sit off of Get Smoking. He should, in theory, Matt, just get a perfect trip in theory. I just don't know if he can see out the distance. I totally agree, but I think he's got as good a shot as any, and I would take as low as probably 4-1 personally, but it'll be interesting to see. Pete, go ahead with your question for Matt.
Yeah, it's funny. The question I had is sort of generic again, but it relates a little bit to Spooky Channel, because I was on the fence of Spooky Channel in my top 3, and actually I would have him for sure on my pick 5 tickets as somewhere at like the BC level. My question was, in the last 2 years, so 2022, 23, the 2 best races he's run were on Lasix. He's off in a few of them where he hasn't run as well. Do you take that into consideration? Do you look at that and say, hey, this horse, now that he's coming off, maybe I'm not going to get his best effort? Do you pay attention to that? Because I know we go back and forth on here a lot about whether you should use that in your handicapping, whether it matters, whether it's easy enough to figure out what the answer is for a certain horse to even use that data point in your handicapping.
I think when you have some of these older veterans and there is a rather clear sort of line in the sand when they run well versus when they don't run well, and one happens to be when they're on Lasix and one happens to be when they're off, that to me is useful information. That's stuff that you can use to your advantage. To me, the greatest case study in terms of that argument is Last Samurai, who is a really nice older horse. And I'm sure we can't do it on the fly, but his races on Lasix, he runs giant, and his races off Lasix, he runs terrible. It's just cut and dry. There's no 2 ways around it. He needs Lasix, in my opinion. With this horse, I guess I'm a little bit heartened to see. I know it was way back to 21, but he did win the Sycamore without Lasix.
Yeah. That's why I was a little more gray with him, because he's done both, but his last couple wins. So I didn't know if it was more of a recent thing where he needed a little more, or it was just he got beat by up to the mark, and that last one he just didn't pick his feet up. That could have been anything.
I will say too, the John B. Connolly from earlier this year, was over, an absolute bog, but you don't really get to see it in the running line unless you go back and watch. He was wide every step of the way, and for them to have the short comment be hung, I think that's really unkind. He probably ran 1.75 miles or close to it in a 1.5 mile race over a bog. I thought he ran. It's part of the reason I loved him in the Mervyn Muniz. I think he's a pretty good horse. I think. Look, I'm not going to get into this piece. I had a big exacta in the Turf Classic of Up to the Mark over Spooky Channel. Now things have happened, and whatever. There's nothing you can do about it. But I actually think he ran well that day. At 1.1 miles, the distance that he's certainly capable of. But I think he's better going a little bit longer, where he can be relatively close to the front end. He's just one that, and on top of it, I know he's going to be a number. He's not going to be 8-1. He's not going to be 10-1.
Yeah, for sure.
He's probably at least 15. And again, I think this is probably the wrong way to approach this. At Kentucky Downs, if I can make any case for a bomb, I'm probably just going to go with him.
Yeah, it's I always think of it's like European races where it's like, it doesn't matter. In the European races, when you watch them, or the overseas races, you're like, any horse, I don't care what the odds are, they have a shot, even if the form isn't perfect coming in. And I almost look at Kentucky Downs that way. Sorry, Howard, I didn't mean to.
No, it's like Kidogans is in this race, Pete.
Yeah, that's my guy. Yeah, I picked him on the show, Kidodan, when he won at 40 back then, and I didn't have him the next time at 20, unfortunately. Actually, I didn't even have him as much as I wanted to at 40, like an idiot. But he was his last 2 races don't give me a ton of confidence coming into this one, unfortunately.
Matt, I got to ask you about me and Mr. C. Otherwise, my good friend Charlie Freeman, who's one of our young hosts on Bet and Boozin', which is our show on Wednesday nights, Matt, where we got some great young handicappers. He's a fan of me and Mr. C. He had him 2 back. Michael Mager can move up horses. I don't know if this horse classes up, but here's another horse that probably will be bigger than 10-1. You could do worse with like a 15-1 shot in this race. He just keeps getting better and better.
I've got no issue at all with me and Mr. C. He's the spring chicken of the Maker bunch in here at 6 years old.
Yes, at 6.
Again, he's won his last 2 runs. I think the thing that's most encouraging, he's come from off of it in both of them, but the pace scenarios, if you're a Timeform US user, are polar opposites. One had a hot pace that he was able to get up in time. The other one, there was no pace, and he just outclassed that field. Yeah. So to me, he's just a horse that's getting good. I have no gripe whatsoever. If this is a horse that you like, the distance, I guess that's maybe a little bit of an unknown, but I wouldn't be, again, you can find out at a big number. It's not like you're talking about a 2 or 3-1 shot that you're like, I think he's probably going to struggle to get the final little uphill distance at 1.5 miles. Well, that's a totally different animal than taking a 10 or 15-1 shot that you're worried about.
Well, you're getting Verstappen at 9-2, right? And he beat, at least he beat Verstappen 2 back, so you could see that he could beat someone. The funny thing, Maker, who you think of as long distance turf, obviously at Kentucky Downs at 10 furlongs and up at Kentucky, 4 for 53. That surprised me too, because I always love Red Knight. So I was like, oh, let me look. And he has 3 horses in here. So another one where maybe if you think everybody thinks of Maker in long distance, and maybe for whatever reason, it doesn't happen as much here, but his horses will get bet the same way. So, but I like me and Mr. C as well. So I'm sort of going to buck that trend a little bit.
Matt, before we let you go, I'd be remiss not to ask you about one NFL pick this weekend. The NFL games have started, and we're going to end our show here in just a little bit. Do you have one nugget for everyone? If those people don't know, Matt is an excellent sports bettor and enjoys betting the NFL. You have one game out there you'd like to throw out for our great viewers and listeners this weekend?
Yeah, I was looking at some stuff before we came on. It's so hard this early in the season. I'm probably long term, I do believe in the Chargers. I think the Chargers, I know people have rolled their eyes. They've got kind of the stench to them.
I'm a Charger fan. I got Charger stuff all over the wall back there.
Look, they've got athletes everywhere, both sides of the ball. And I think the Kellen Moore piece is so under. People have talked about it, but I don't think they've talked about it enough. I mean, they went from me calling plays to a guy that got Dak Prescott to throw for 5,000 yards. I just think it's a massive change. I would probably look to, this is gross. I'd probably look to Monday night, and I would say take 2.5 with the Jets.
Wow.
I don't love the Bills this year. that could look ridiculous in time. I think Fallow's window is it's not
Hopefully,
closing,
Jim's
but
not in the chat. Jim Pilar's right, isn't he the Bills guy?
Yeah, Jim
I
Pilar's
think
a
they've
big
got
Buffalo guy. All right. You break it up, Matt, so it's perfect time to I'll let you go. Matt, listen, thanks again for coming on. We really appreciate it. I know you had a long day. I look forward to seeing you in person on Saturday. It's going to be a great day. And once again, keep up the great work on FanDuel and NBC Sports. And we'll see you soon, my friend. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Good. Thanks for having me back on. We'll talk again soon.
All right,
See you,
take
Matt.
care,
Take care,
Bye.
man.
All right, guys. Matt Bernier. Unbelievable job. He's awesome. I can't say enough good things about Matt. Here's what we're going to do, guys. We're going to show our late pick 5 tickets, and then we'll end the show. And we're not worried about going on during the NFL game because, according to Paul, no one watches the NFL anyway, so who cares, right, Paul? Pete, let's go to your ticket first, Pete. Here's Pete's pick 5 at Kentucky Downs. He's got 6, 11, 12 with 3, 5, 7 with 1, 7 with 2, 6, 7 with 2, 8, 11. You want to throw Spooky Channel in there? I'll let you in for free, Pete, on the end.
You know what's funny? Spooky Channel was one of the last 2 cuts. I was 5 deep in the last leg.
I'm going to let you throw it. That's the kind of I'm in a charitable mood today. I don't know how much it's going to be. We'll figure it out.
I had me and Mr. C and Spooky Channel were on my ticket, and those were my last 2 cuts, unfortunately.
There you go. You got Spooky Channel. Real quick about your thoughts here, Pete, on your ticket.
Yeah, nothing too exciting. I mean, I didn't love anyone. There was no singles that I really liked. I went the thinnest in the 10th with one-timer and Cogburn. I figure in that one, I'm looking for a horse one-timer who I expect to be close, and Cogburn, who if the speed heats up, I think he's the best closer. And then in the other races, I could have gone deep. And honestly, when I first built the ticket, I was deep in a bunch of the legs, and he just had to chop. So to me, I think it's a tough sequence. I think you can kind of go spready in any of the legs, depending upon which one you think is the toughest. But I don't know if any of them are really all that easy to narrow down, even the smaller field.
I agree. I think probably the most narrow is race 9. That's the White Frost, the New Year's Eve race. But
yeah, which is funny because we probably named about 5 of the horses, though, that have really logical shots to win it.
It's a brutal sequence. Paul is going 2, 8, 11, 12 with 7, with 1, 5, 7, with 2, 3, 6, with 2, 3, 4, 8, 11. It's a $90 ticket. He is singling the number 7. That's New Year's Eve, correct? I believe.
Yeah, I thought I thought you had to go thin somewhere, and that's, in my opinion, the most likely logical winner. I did want to be spread out at the end in that big race, just because we talked about several horses just tonight. We talked about you don't want to get beat by Red Knight. Red Verstappen had no chance last time because Trailmaker walked around in like crawling fractions. Santine I like. And then you get out to Therapist. Do you want to get beat by him? So anyway, I think I'm going to take a stand in that second leg. I'm not overly confident in it, but in the interest of spreading in other places and staying under budget, which I always do, I wanted to go single the 7 there.
We do appreciate that, Paul.
Always stays under budget. That is a very
we have on film the time that he did not. We have a time on film where he did not stay under budget, but we'll just.
Many
wait,
times.
I think I've got it right here. No, I don't have it this week.
Well, the one was after the gamble, so that one was on. That was okay.
We were allowed to have
that one. He was. That
one
was
of the best moments, by the way, in the history of this podcast is when Paul showed his over budget ticket and we gave him a little hard time. That was classic. My pick 5, 6, 7, 8, 12. With 2, 3, 7, with 1, 5, 7, 8, 12, with 2, 6, 7, with an aggressive single of Santine on the end for $90. I will readily admit, guys, I don't have full confidence in Santine, mainly because the distance. He's certainly talented enough, and I thought he ran a huge race last time. No question about it. I'm very concerned that horses like Red Knight, the New York Breds, Therapist, and maybe in a Spooky Channel will come over the top late. But I don't see a fast pace, guys. And if Drew can ration his speed, and if he can run as well as he did last time, I see no reason why this horse can't win at an okay price. And I just thought this was a real tough sequence. I probably shouldn't go 3 deep, guys, in leg 2. I just want to put that out there. I think, Paul, you've got a good idea. And Pete, you went, 2 deep in that race? I probably shouldn't go 3 deep in leg 2, but I thought Haughty was interesting. And if Haughty wins, I don't want to lose my pick 5 right there. So, again, I'd play in ABC. I would throw in Spooky Channel, Therapist, Red Knight, a bunch of others in as B horses. And Santine probably would not be my lone A guys in an ABC. But again, budget constraints, my own self-inflicted budget constraints. You got to make some decisions. Guys, I put up the final banner. Paul, go to you. Any great thoughts? Del Mar is closing this weekend. We'll talk about Del Mar, by the way, on the Power Picks. And just to let you know, I'm going to send out an email real quick, guys. I'm sending out Power Picks tomorrow morning. So no matter when you hear this, if you are a Power Pick subscriber, usually they're sent out Saturday, but because I'm traveling, I will be sending out the Power Picks to everyone early Friday morning. So please look for that. Paul, Del Mar is closing. Any other final thoughts in the horse racing world? Anything you'd like to mention?
Pete, that means you and I better get them in tonight. That's what he's trying to tell us.
I sent my stuff already.
This guy already sent them in, by the way.
I wanted to watch some TV tonight and watch some football and some tennis.
High five,
I'm not working tonight. I'm not working tonight.
Well, I got plenty of work to do. But no, I mean, I think it's great to have this type of card, Howard, on this day. I'm a big, I think we're all big New York guys, but I love the New York racing, and they're off this weekend. And so that would normally make it a somewhat down weekend until Del Mar starts around 5:00. But this card fits very, very nicely. And we talk a lot about the configuration, and my observations are, if you're between a favorite and a price horse, take the price horse every time. And it's hard to lead throughout the stretch. I mean, it happens probably once every 2 cards, it's just so long. They switch to the head-on TV, and of course, it's really hard to see. Watching head-on, it's hard to tell. But if you do think your horse is on the lead, you're like, where the hell is the wire? Oh, they still have a furlong to go. Oh, okay, maybe I'll go get a drink and come back. So, but it's good. I've been okay, actually. I blew a winner today that I had. I got up tied up in doubles and picked 3s and didn't hit it. And last race, I had the winner and had 7 horses underneath and didn't hit it. But no one wants to hear my problems.
Hey, Paul, you want to comment on Richard Avalar down below? I'm assuming you know about that.
I do, very briefly. Yeah, the national, of which I in fairness, they were nominated by many people, but it is an award from the National Turf Writers and Broadcasters for I think it's contributions to racing or best racing story, whatever it is. But they were Team Cody's Wish is the winner. So it's not only the Dormans, it's Godolphin, it's Bill Mott, it's Junior. And happy to say, Howard, and I don't know if you'll be out there in time, but it'll be presented at the National Turf Writers and Broadcasters Awards dinner on Wednesday of Breeders' Cup week. So if you can get away from the children, Mr. Miller will be joining me at the event, already confirmed. So if you have reason to get out there by Wednesday night, and obviously, Pete, that would apply to you as well. That's they're really happy about it, mainly because it's the Team Cody's Wish angle, and they're very good about spreading it around. So, and Senorita's running Thursday, Howard. So you got to be there Thursday anyway.
Don't tempt me, Paul, because I'm going to be there Thursday for the races. I was not. We'll see. I'll leave TBA.
You're looking a little peaked already. You're looking a little sick. You might have to call in that day.
You know what?
I didn't see any of your students in the chat.
Dr. Visco. Calling Dr. Visco. Calling Dr. Visco.
Who was it? Israel? Who's the one who's using the chat? Israel. I didn't see Israel in the chat. So,
you know why? We got a test tomorrow. He's studying, I hope.
Oh, good. He better be not in the chat.
He needs to be. Pete, final thoughts?
No, I think it's cool. I think going to Paul's point, I really love the Kentucky Downs meet because I love the turf racing, and I think it's just a place it's hard to handicap, but it's one of those where if you could just catch that one race or that one sequence, man, you could just make your day pretty easily the way the prices come in there. So definitely play the sequence, play the whole day. It's a fun track. It should be a fun day.
The only thing I will throw out there, other than I'm thrilled to be going, I've never been to Kentucky Downs. It's going to be a short trip, but I'm excited to be there in person. The weather's going to be great. Pay attention to the races earlier on Saturday to see how the track is playing. I mean, it's an absolute bust. You gotta move on your feet. You gotta dance on your toes. I will admit, guys, sometimes I get stubborn and I do not make changes as a card occurs. This particular day when I'm there Saturday, I'm going to watch very carefully, because if the inside paths are really much better or speed is holding, you got to make adjustments on days like this, especially with these kind of purses. And these jockeys are not idiots. They know what's going on. So I would just pay attention to track bias, especially on Saturday. Guys, that I believe will wrap it up for Matt Bernier, Pete Visco, Paul Halloran, and yours truly, Howard Kravitz. This has been episode 289 of the HHH Racing Podcast. Thank you very much for watching and listening. Crush your bets this Saturday at Kentucky Downs. Take care, everyone. Have a great night. Bye-bye.
If you have not followed his Triple H Horse Racing Podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.